Hello, I'm dgerard and this is Pivot to AI, coming to you every weekday. Today, Sam Altman gets his wish. OpenAI actually got its deal through to turn from a weird charity thing into an ordinary-ish for-profit company. I'm surprised, but they did it. The deal. Microsoft got everything it wanted for free. Microsoft gets a 27% equity stake, rights to research until 2030, and rights to the software itself until 2032. Microsoft gave up an imaginary profit share for a real revenue share. 20% of OpenAI's revenue, not profits but revenue, actual money flowing to Microsoft. Microsoft shares jumped about 2% yesterday. Part of the Microsoft deal hinges on AGI, artificial general intelligence, or maybe actually generates income. Once an independent expert panel says OpenAI has achieved AGI, whatever that actually means, we don't have a clear definition here, then the revenue share stops, but not until then. Remember, we're talking about large language models here, lying chatbots, stochastic parrots, super-duper autocomplete. They're going to need a really contorted definition of AGI for one of those to pass, but I'm sure they can do it. The non-profit is now called the OpenAI Foundation, and it gets 26% of the shares. The other 47% of the shares will be held by the investors and the current and former employees. Sam Altman gets some himself, though we don't know how much. SoftBank has freed up the other $20 billion of their promised $40 billion investment. They sort of have to. Burning over $20 billion of actual money lets SoftBank book over $40 billion of OpenAI equity, and their stock goes up.
To enable that, we have a new structure. So maybe you saw before this like crazy convoluted diagram of all of the OpenAI entities. Now it's much simpler. We have a nonprofit called the OpenAI Foundation that is in control of where the board sits, to come back to the board, where the board also sits, and owns a slice of our PBC, Public Benefit Corporation, called OpenAI Group. So nonprofit in control, Public Benefit Corporation sits under it.
What about the states? California and Delaware. The OpenAI non-profit and its for-profit subsidiaries were all formed in Delaware and they're registered to operate in California. So those states had to sign off on this deal. Why did California and Delaware let this through? California's Memorandum of Understanding says OpenAI will make a ton of money for California because the for-profit will operate in California. They also hammer on the Safety and Security Committee of the non-profit to fight off the dangers of the AGI. Ooh. Delaware's pretty much the same. Attorney General Kathy Jennings' press release says, quote, "I am pleased that OpenAI committed to a governance structure going forward that requires primacy for safety and security." Unquote. So it looks like OpenAI snowed the states on the promise of averting the evil AI. Safety. Public benefit. The new for-profit will be called OpenAI Group PBC. That's Public Benefit Corporation, which means the company is required to consider its effects on the world in some manner. The Public Benefit Charter is the same as the previous non-profit charter, but being a public benefit corporation does not actually constrain the company in almost any manner. Like Elon Musk's XAI is a public benefit corporation that runs the Nazi bar formerly known as Twitter and whose AI calls itself Mecha Hitler. Very beneficial. A public benefit corporation is a for-profit business pretending it's not about the money. Well, OpenAI is about losing the money, so what happens now? What does this mean? Well, those OpenAI shares of future profits that were weird pseudo-shares were traded around like they were shares of stock. Those are now real shares of equity. Still private, but they're much more real. There's something can be valued. The valuations are still sort of arbitrary, a bit fake, but they're a lot more real than they were. A public benefit corporation can even take its shares public on the stock market. Maybe that's where OpenAI will look for free money next. OpenAI's backers really, really want it to go public. If a stock offering needs propping up, the backers will dive in to help. OpenAI still just sets money on fire, which you might think was a barrier. It's gone from being a non-profit to being a no-profit. When WeWork tried to go public in 2019, it was such an obvious money pit that the stock offering failed and the company went broke. But OpenAI has made sure it's famous for setting money on fire. No investor can claim they did not know. I have a nasty feeling there's a lot of ordinary people who are just waiting, hanging out to throw their money away on OpenAI stock. It's the AI company, the flagship of the AI bubble. AI is here to stay, you know. OpenAI? Sure bet. One really bad thing about this deal is it just opened the gates to corporations to gut charities much more easily. A proper charity can run a lot like a business, but it gets a lot of free rides, and it can grow into something pretty juicy. This is a precedent for large investors to come in and drain a charity if they say the right word forms. I predict that's going to be a problem. Gravity works though, and there isn't enough investor money in the world to pay for all of OpenAI's promises, but I am disconcerted to say my 2027 guess for the bubble finally dying is looking more and more solid, and it's not going to pop early. Unless it does. Thanks for tuning in to Pivot to AI. Sam Altman's had some great news today, but I'm sure we can still make his day worse. Remember, Sam Altman cries 8 delicious and bitter tears for every $1 donated to Pivot to AI. You can support our work here with just $5 into the Patreon linked in the show notes below. Or if on YouTube, hit the join button below the video. If you liked this episode, send it to just one other person who's trying to work out what the heck is going on with OpenAI here. Beyond, it really is that stupid. Hit like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a nice podcast review. It really helps. Thank you all. I couldn't do this without you. See you tomorrow, and bye for now.